Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have RDV, of course, from the great Midwest. I am from Central Florida, broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. And RDV, I've got to tell you, I know you live on the outskirts of some major metropolitan areas up there where we get in the coyote country. Slim Pickens is going to tell us in tonight's movie, 1981, The Howling. There's something special about the 1980s, and when we talk about 81 in particular, you just got to sit there and say, wow, what a great year for horror movies. You have Friday the 13th. You have, of course, the holy triumvirate of three exceptionally very fun and entertaining werewolf movies that all have great makeup. You've got, of course, The Howling, which we're talking about here tonight.
Yeah.
Very underrated, under-discussed movie. Of course, we've talked Wolfen with Albert Finney, and we've also talked about An American Werewolf in London. Three movies, the exact same year, all wolves. What are the odds? There are no odds there. This is an outlier, but it's a great time to be talking stuff here. And then The Howling,
I
my
guess.
description is short and sweet. It's smart. It's modernized. It's got a lot of recognizable characters from the time. Um, it's got a little bit of humor at the end, and it talks about the roles of men and women. And I think it's an early precursor of what it's like to talk about veganism versus the, things that need to be kept wild, stay wild. You can't tame them, and all sorts of little life lessons. There's some humor in here that's not very present because it's very
Yeah.
foreboding and a slow build. What's your initial take?
It's a really modernized telling of basically what you'd see like a Bela Lugosi of the werewolf, movie. Except that the twist, there's more than one werewolf. And like I said, it felt like a really old like a Universal soundstage, but instead they decided to make it more modernized for 1980s stuff. Of course they tied it into basically, but a news reporter, I forget what her name is. Dee Wallace, I think is her name is the actress.
E.T.'s mom.
Yes, Karen is her character in this. She's a news reporter. She's trying to help the police catch a serial killer, Eddie, played by Robert Picardo from Star Trek Voyager. Yes, also Slim Pickens on Inner Space. And I didn't recognize him, because he had hair.
Yeah.
The other thing is that so I'm watching this, like the atmosphere is really 1981. Everything they have, the technology, the cameras when they're doing like the filming the news stuff, they're so old school. It's like they almost look fake. They don't look real.
Right.
But that's how everything looked before you got into like the cassette tape.
Still analog back then.
Yeah. Everything looked like a projector. It was weird. But I gotta say though, out of the movies that came out this year, 1981, obviously I go with the American Werewolf in London. Because to me that was a lot more tight knit, faster pace. This took a while to build up the whole scenery to get you the action where you're like, okay, now we're at is Engeltine, our former friend Engeltine on here. Well, he's still our friend, but he doesn't show up anymore. Anyway, but say the meat and potatoes. Once you get to the juicy bits, once you get to the nice steak, of the film, it's a lot of vegetables. You gotta stuff yourself down. It's like I'm just not into all these vegetables. Give me to the actual main course. And when they finally do, it pays off. So I mean, obviously for me, I'm being the younger person. I'm the millennial, 37 years old. So for me, it's a nice setup. You get introduced to characters and show you on, but to me, it takes a little too long because it's 40 minutes for me until you finally get to the point where it's like, dude, they're hunting wolves now. This girl, she's gonna get attacked by a werewolf. I'm like, use the hatchet. She uses the hatchet. The props are good. People turning into the werewolf. If you're squeamish, there is full frontal nudity in this. Don't worry, it's a woman, not a guy. So if you're into women, that's good. If you're not into it, yeah. But it's a lot to unpack because there's a lot that happens in this movie. But I just wish that the pace was faster.
See, and I understand your sentiment here. I will disagree and say that I thought the pacing was perfect because to me, this is supposed to be a bit of a psychological type movie. It's not an action film, and it's a horror film in that when I say it's a smart modernized horror movie, what I mean is it's not about werewolves. It's about this whole idea, especially in the late 70s, early 80s. You had this big movement going on of personal perfection, being the best you can be. going on for about 20 years now, and people will argue about what happened with hippies and pop culture and crime and just how much unrest there was since the 60s and all that. Not that it has never been there, but just in terms of society. So
Mhm.
how do you modernize horror? When we talked about before briefly with Rosemary's Baby, how you put that in the most modern of all settings, downtown New York, in a skyscraper, and you have something to do with Satan. I mean, it's freaking cool. But how do you do it? Rosemary's Baby successfully was able to do that. Here, it takes a long time, like you say, and I think that's the genius of the film. So it starts off where we got Karen, of all names, Dee Wallace. She's an anchor that is going under a super top secret, only her small group of journalistic type reporters, action reporters were following her. She's
Yeah,
basically meeting a weirdo sex dude, and it's not.
he keeps calling her. He only contacts her, so they have to use her as
But
undercover.
there's a reason that we find out later, which is great because right now we just think, oh, she's just trying to interview some perv for the quarterly rating spike and all this stupid crap. And so she's in a bad part of town, and she ends up in a not a sex room, basically watching not so pleasant films that
Yeah,
were definitely available in downtown. I'm
it's a
not going
peep
to say what's
show.
going on. Yeah,
Peep
but you
show.
see all this, and it feels grimy, right?
It feels
The
great
guys,
because the way the guy's talking, he's like, he talks about how he's for victims, he's like, you're smart, it's like, I think I can make you really happy, I was like, this guy's really seedy, he's really seedy,
he wants to show her
and
something.
the thing is that you don't even see his face. That's the
That's correct.
best part. So it's like, I think that's a smart part because you don't see the guy's person's face, but you hear it, you always see in the back, but then like I said, after she's talking to them, and then meanwhile the cops trying to track her down. They track her down to this, and then while Eddie's talking to her and stuff, and he starts growling. His voice gets super like freaking deep, like monstrous. And I said that is a cool scene right there. I was like, I don't know what to expect because like, is he gonna go full out wolf right here? But then the next thing you know, the rookie cop comes in because she's so frightened, tired because she can see his face. We don't see his face. All we know is we see the rookie cop walks in, and he basically shoots Eddie through the curtain, I guess. And the old senior cop is like, "Oh, son, you should have done that." It's like, "What are you doing?" And so the blood's coming out of the curtain and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And so all we know is Eddie's dead. We don't know anything else about this. So we're like, I'm at this point, I'm thinking like, all right, I guess he's dead. But like, how does this tie in the werewolves? It's called the Howling. I'm sure. So we're kind of slowly building up there, and then I love we get later on to the bookstore eventually when we get Dick Miller, who's basically he's one of those guys you always see on TV or movies.
Yeah. So this is what I call group number 2 that are doing
Yeah.
the detective work.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I love seeing Dick Miller in things because the last time I saw him in anything was the Dean Cain Superman stuff. He
Yep.
was always the guy, the snitch, he talked to, and the guy's just a pleasant actor, and he plays his role, and I just he's got that presence. Whenever you see him on the screen, it's like he's just like the guy like you can go to. He's like some smuck ordered silver bullets but never picked them up, So it's like, and he's got books about, and she's reading a book about the werewolves, and it's like, oh, that's a good book, He's just like he's like your the good guy, your uncle, the guy who always want to come over for dinner. He's got stories probably, but I love how they set up, they talk about the silver bullets, and then she's looking at the book, and inside the book it says it shows Little Red Riding Hood, so wait, now we're starting to get into some of the werewolf stuff. I'm like, okay, I can see where it's going now.
Yep.
But if you watch this movie without even seeing the cover or hearing the movie, you wouldn't know it's a werewolf movie until this part, though. But I gotta say though, I love the scenery. I love the setting in this. You can tell it's
California coast. This is what you should be doing with California films.
You can tell it's 1981.
Yep.
Everything. I miss payphones, Booth. That's the thing. Everything about this whole entire movie, as far as setting, scenery, the culture back then. I mean, man, simple times, no internets. If you hitchhike, you took a great chance because there was no cell phones.
Well, the thing too with the setup, like you say, it was slow. Obviously, what's happening here is the woman's psychologically scarred. I'm not mad at her for her choices or whatever. She's a
Yeah,
strong, independent female. We meet her strong, independent husband, who was obviously an ex-football player, who's very supportive and all that. We find out that he tries to stay away from meat, and this is Hollywood's way of saying he's a vegan, basically, because Hollywood in general portrays themes a little bit at a time, generally, at least back then. And so in some of these movies, you got a sense of these people from the 80s taking vitamins or smoothies or whatever. And those didn't get much more popular until the mall culture hit big in the 80s. And so this guy, he's a good looking guy. He's a stud athlete. I mean, and they seem like a power couple. But they happen to be friends with somebody she's interviewing at the station, who's the Avengers John Steed guy, McNamee or whatever his name is. So it's kind of cool that you've got a guy that's just so pleasant to watch in his middle age. He's not an ass or holier than thou. And it's like, hey, you know,
he's
I'm
such
sorry,
a
you
sweetheart
guys.
in this.
He is. He's like, he's like, you know, I'm sorry you guys went through this, but you know, my place called the Colony up on the coast. You know, why don't you stay there? I only let special people go there, but you know, I know you guys, you're good peeps. You know, we'll take care of you when you go up there. So you get the drive up the Pacific Coast Highway up to wherever this place is at, and the B team that's doing detective work, they go to the pervs place that he was renting, and they find a bunch of, of course, everybody who draws like a, you know, exquisite level. They find all these nice pictures and stuff like that, which of course ends up being the Colony later. But what's cool here is that, like I said, you got the detective side going on if things are moving slow for you, and then you've got this woman that is scarred, even though she's a strong woman. She's not weak-willed, but she's going through a very traumatic experience, and her husband is there to support her. So you could really honestly argue that this is a very realistic portrayal at the time of modern feminism, meaning she's a feminist, she's independent of her husband, they both support each other, and they're trying to do something together and support each other by going to the Colony to do some low-key sort of just relax a little bit, take some time off, and recharge their battery, sorts of thing. Nothing's pushed on them at all. It's very low-key, and when they get there, it's like a little folksy party. There's a few people there that are pleasant. You got, I don't know if it was Slim Pickens, or Slim Pickens I think is the sheriff. The other guys, you know, who I thought was kind of funny, is the guy that's brought the cattle down there because they're having on the beach. It's a beautiful setup, this nice little picnic. You got some people playing some folk country type music and all that. So it's just a nice kind of get together, except for the sultry, all in black person named Marcia, who you're immediately thinking, well, she's a sex pot. But then you go, wait a minute, if all these people know the doctor, maybe they all each have their own slightly psychological thing. But if you notice, the majority of them are couples. So it doesn't seem out of place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so you're going, what the fuck is going on here? When is this thing going to start taking off? Because she's having visions. They go to have relations. She's like, I'm sorry. I just keep picturing this. I just really can't do it right now. And he's being a good husband at this point, going, I understand. I support you. He's not completely turned off, despite the fact Marcia threw himself at him already, or at least sexually intimidated him. Because as a strong, independent, sexual female, Marcia really put it on him early. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Christopher Stone is the guy we're talking about. He's the one. He's the one that plays. For what is his character name in this? Is it supposed to be William?
Husband.
Yeah, I know. He's also from Cujo.
Oh, that's right. So was Dee Wallace.
Yeah, it's funny. They're both in that. Yeah, his character. He's like he's the former Marine or whatever, Army, whatever, and like he now. This is where we get the beautiful Elizabeth. What's her name? Elizabeth Brooks, who plays Marsha. You'll recognize her because she's the brunette. She has the teeth, you know, hanging out, you know, from her necklace, and then she's got the base of the vest, the leather vest on. Long
yes.
Every time I saw her, she basically like stole the whole entire film from me because she's that damn beautiful. And sinister too, if you find out later.
Well, because she doesn't blink.
No. She's got some Italian or French gene or something. I forgot what her heritage is, but when she's on, obviously she makes Karen look like plain Jane, and Karen does not. Karen dresses like an older woman, like she's in her 60s. But anyway,
very conservative.
Very conservative, you know,
middle-aged,
where Marsha,
not sexy at all.
Marshy is like, she's the one. It's like, shit. I bet she's got a Bowie knife under that pillow. I wouldn't trust her. She's the loose cannon.
DTF.
Yes. Can you spell that out for me?
I just did.
No, without the short anagram. Yeah. Marsha obviously she seduces him. So and then he kind of rebuffs Chris Spacey or Christopher Stone Williams, whatever we call the husband. We call him the stiff. He rebuffs her advances. Later on they have there's a wolf hunt. They're looking for a wolf. He ends up getting attacked. His arm is all bit or scratched. Later on, he ends up basically like going out in the middle of the night, walking out in his bathrobe, leaving Karen all alone. He walks in and he strips down, and then she appears there, by the campfire. They get it down. There's your full frontal nudity. I gotta say though, I was like, I wasn't expecting that. I was like, I'm like, I guess they're really going with the whole wolf animalistic, mating stuff. She marked him. She wants him.
Yep.
And it's a dominance sign, basically, over Karen. Even though at this point, Karen doesn't know what's going on. All she knows is that her husband's left. We hear like basically him while they're going at it. His teeth start popping out, like he's got one of those insert the fake teeth you buy for Halloween.
Yep. The Dracula teeth.
Yeah, yes. And so does Marsha. And they start turning, and then you hear the wolves, howling, and then just like everybody hears it. Mary, what part of the camp you're in? I gotta say, but though, even Karen is kind of a stick in the mud this whole entire movie until the end.
Well, but this is kind of the point: is that she's a little bit professional, a little bit repressed, and even though they're a power couple, it's at the point where it's gotten so bad they need psychological family counseling or couples counseling, if you want to call it that, which is very modernistic at the time. And it makes sense for a California couple to say, hey, we don't have a problem trying to do that. The guy's a vegan. He's you got all this beautiful brisket meats and cuts, and he's like, no, I kind of want to stay away from it. Even though they're trying to make him a man in a way without really saying it or spelling it out. They take him hunting, for God's sakes. And the one dude that's Marsha's brother says, hey man, if you shoot a rabbit, you got to kill it, man. It's like it's a sin if you don't, which is the hunter's code. Basically, you use everything when you kill it, and you eat it all, and you honor what nature's provided to you, if that's your belief with hunting, right? So it makes sense that all these things are going on in a way, and you're like, that's a big part of the movie to me, are these sex roles that you have. Well, why can't a woman be powerful and independent like a feminist would want it to be? Why can't a man be supportive and a co-pilot, if you will, rather than the alpha? Well, wait a minute. If you're having problems with your wife, what makes you an alpha? Is it, seducing another woman? Is it being a part of a pack? What the hell's really going on here? And you're right. This movie seems like a 2-hour movie, but it's only 90 minutes, and we're halfway in before really any of this stuff really starts clicking and taking place.
So I remember, I'm not sure what I'm probably out of order, but I remember basically Terry comes in, and she's in there to take photographs, stuff. She sees all the taxidermy stuff. She ends up being attacked by a werewolf, being chased. Now this is a scene where it's like you see she runs out. First the door opens up. She quick runs in the other room, slams that door. She really has to try to get the window open or the door open. She finally gets it out. She's able to crawl through. Then she quick hides in this little hut, the corner, and she finds an axe in the wood. She grabs that. The werewolf, and then comes behind her, pushes arms her there, and he's grabbing her, and she's going like, oh, and she finally able to basically chop his hand off. Turns out later that's Eddie.
Yep.
Eddie lost
Marsh's brother.
Yep. And I gotta say the makeup effects for Eddie, his transformation. He's not fully wolf, but when you see him later on in that, I guess the morgue, when Karen finds out that he's alive, and he's like, yeah, it's like, why don't you give you a piece of my mind? He starts digging into his head, pulling the
that
bolt.
was the line and the scene that freaked all of us out as kids. I mean, the full nudity thing was like, oh my god, what's going on? Is that what it looks like? But I'm gonna give you a piece of my mind, and he literally takes a chunk out of his brain and to give it to her. That's phenomenal. I mean, how can you not laugh at that?
I thought he was going for the bullet at first, but I'm thinking like, well, no, the autopsy would have pulled the bullet already. They would have pulled the slug out.
Yeah.
You know. So I was like, what is he gonna go? He pulled like I was like, this is so gross. But his whole side of his face, you saw it was just all gone. His right side. It was I forgot what happened or whatever, but I just know he got shot in the head. But I mean, like, his whole face was kind of melted off. But yeah, Terry. We basically, as Karen sees Eddie walking in like this, she's like, he's getting ready to like just fully transform. She looks down, she sees, well, we found Terry. Her throat slit. She's propped up against the thing. Poor Terry.
Yeah.
Once again, I think she had like a 70s, like did she have this? Did she have the vest on? Or it was a jacket? I can't remember what it was, but like those are always popular too. Like in the werewolf.
From the 70s to 80s for a year or two there, they kind of overlapped, and then about 83ish roughly is when things you really become, oh, that's an 80s
jacket vest I'm talking about before they fly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any sort of collars or vests like that, especially in the 70s, especially for women,
flannel,
the sign of the power suit and everything else there too was to make them a bit more masculine, square in the shoulders, and basically be equal. It was a big push in there.
Well, that was Evil Dead. You had Bruce Campbell with the flannel, and he had and the one the guy with him, his friend, had the vest on over it too. I mean, that was a fashion sense. That means you actually knew your way around the country because that's what you wore. That you wore flannel. Flannel was big. Kept you warm. Not so much anymore. If you wear flannel now, you're like a poser and like want to be like skate punk rocker in Seattle. Hippies.
Well, and that's the whole thing too. Is when we talk about modernizing horror here, we're basically getting into the third act. Where we know that there's a werewolf. We know that the serial killer who's preying on all these homeless people that wanted to meet her and was calling her. It doesn't seem so random now because we know it all connects here. We've got the B detective team getting called in, but then there's this slight little break here of what's going on with the relationships because, Karen and her friend, when her friend comes up there to visit or whatever with them as they're talking over stuff that's going on, she's like, I don't know. I just feel like, Marcia's trying to put a move on my husband or whatever like that. And she's like, oh, you're fine. He's a good guy, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, he rocked the shit out of her, but we know she was in charge of making that whole thing happen. But a part of us goes, hey, he's not saying anything about it. He doesn't seem sorry, but it doesn't seem like, his wife sucks anymore. He just did what he did and that's it. And whatever the case may be, we know there's something that's going on here with being marked, like you said. Because it turns out that despite the fact that they kind of get into a little bit of an argument about stuff like that. She even makes the comment when they're in bed about, well, we never want the same things at the same times. We're so out of sync. And, when women start talking that synchronicity crap and all this other kind of stuff, guys immediately tune off or whatever like that. But then she makes some other comment and he kind of snaps back at her because he normally never did. He wasn't a wallflower himself, but he was supportive, but he wouldn't. He didn't tolerate her being so bitchy at him. And he backhands her and it's like, oh shit! I didn't see that comment, and she didn't either. So you're going, is this a broken relationship now? Will it mend at the end? And I'll just say that towards this last ending, everybody gets what they deserve in a way.
For comic book fans, we call that a Hank Pym. Pimp slap.
Or Rick James, yeah.
So let's talk about Dennis Duggan.
Let's talk.
Dennis Duggan. It says Richie, was it Brockleham? 1978, he went on to be on Rockford Files. He had his own show. This guy is like the badass in this movie. He's the one that comes in and he's like saves the day. He's got the rifle and they're like, because basically she called him, Karen had called him to come help her, and he said, I'll be right there to wait. And he drives up in his nice sweet little Porsche, silver Porsche, with the pop-up headlights and everything. So anyway, he goes there and Karen's, basically being brought into this, this barn or what do you would call it, a room. They're gonna do the ritual, and Dennis Duggan's character. What's his character in this movie? I forgot what it's called. Is Chris. Chris has got. Anyway, Chris comes up. He basically shows up at the morgue first. Where Eddie is, and Eddie's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do? You got a rifle? Go ahead, shoot me. You're right here." And he shoots him, and then you see Eddie gets shot like twice. He's like, "Oh shit, he's got bullets." Because they find out Eddie drops over. This time Eddie's dead. Because why? Well, Chris brought the silver bullets.
I know, right? Yeah,
Like,
he really did. Come on.
It's like the chance of him bringing, like, he went to the bookstore. Hey, you're open this late at night. I need silver bullets. No. So yeah. So then, as they're going to basically, they're talking about, and then basically Marcia says everybody. He says Patrick McNee, the Avengers guy, older guy, and she says to him, "It's like, you know what? I told you we couldn't trust this. We couldn't trust people. You guys thought we could live amongst the humans. No, they're cattle. That's all they are. And like he's like, well, he tries to have sense in her. He's like, well, if you kill her, she's famous. It's gonna cause a problem. Everybody knows that she came up here. So like, well, we make it look like an accident. And Karen's like, why, old man, doctor? You're so kind. Blah blah blah. And here comes Dennis Duggan, aka Chris, with the rifle. And they're like, huh, what's this guy gonna do? He's got a rifle. And he starts just taking them out one by one. He's like, oh shit, he's got silver bullets. This leads to they fleeing into his Porsche, but not only after he kills Patrick Mcnichol. I think Patrick Mcnichol at this point wanted to die. He's like, oh, thank God there's silver bullets, and he died. They're driving with the Porsche, driving down. She's shooting the werewolves, or he is actually, and then she's like, and then they see the sheriff, of this small little resort town, and he's like, oh, they're like, oh, the sheriff's here. She's like, give me the gun. So, and like, that's why I'm like, I would not give her the gun, because she proved she can't handle herself with a gun or do anything. She's useless. I would just say, like, just sit there. I'll do everything myself, because I wouldn't trust her. But he does, gives her the gun, right? Gives her the rifle. They're being chased, and they quick stop, and then as they're in there, the cop basically like has the rifle, and he's like starts shooting at the Porsche. The Porsche is fucked up at this point. He gets out of the car, does a little sweet little move, little tuck and roll, and then goes behind the door. Like that's supposed to stop the bullet. I don't know what they're thinking, but he basically shoots and kills the sheriff. And so then like the car's basically screwed at this point. They go to the sheriff's squad car, and the car won't start. So he's like, I'll just keep flooding it, the engine. I'll just keep flooding, keep turning the key, hoping it'll start. And then while they're in there, they get attacked by 3 more werewolves. They catch up, and he manages to shoot the 2, one on each side. And then the car starts up, and they're still being pursued by one that's hanging on the back. She's got the gun rifle over her shoulder, and it bites her in the shoulder, and then she shoots it, and she looks at the back seat. It's her husband.
Yeah.
I mean, she shot the sheriff at this point, or he did, not the deputy.
I mean, it's kind of like the ending happens so quick. You basically get what's going on because she goes back to town.
But that's not the ending, though.
Exactly. The ending basically is like, well, we got to let people know what's going on, and how do you do that? Well, she's an anchor, a female anchor, like Anchorman was a big deal back then to have a woman there. Thank you, Connie Chung. But she goes on there, and she's supposed to be reading the teleprompter, and in a Ron Burgundy moment, it turns out she's not reading anything on there. She's just saying her own little prepared thing. And one of the last scenes you see is when she lifts her head up, she's like, so here's something I'll show you. And her eyes change, and it looks like she's getting ready to turn into one. And you don't see it, but then you cut away to all these people that are watching the show, like these little kids with the giant Parcheesi thing in the background that everybody had back then. and they're like, whoa, what's that? And mom's like, what's that? And the kid's like, the lady's turning into a werewolf on TV.
The mom's yelling. I was like, "What are you watching?" I'm watching the news, Mom.
And so a couple of people make comments, and then the last scene is at a bar where you hear the bartender say to a guy, "So how do you want your hamburger?" And he goes, "I don't know. It's for the lady. How do you want it, miss?" And he turns to her, and it's Sexy Marsha or whatever, and she goes, "There." And it's certainly like, oh, so she
Yeah,
survived.
basically Dennis had to come in with a rifle, and he just shoots her. And they're like, "Quick, change it." The guy, the production guy, he's like, "Change the thing." It's like, "Yummy, hungry, helping up with dog food." The dog going to the bull. I was like, now they're just making fun of the movie at this point. They got a sense of humor. They're gonna have the dog food helpful after like the werewolves getting shot. But you can saw when she was turning, she had a tear going on her eye. She was crying because like she knows, like, yep, she's cursed. But yeah, Dennis Dunn comes in with a rifle, shoots, kills her. That's all we know from her. Yeah, and we cut to the bar and they're talking about it. They're like, oh yeah, we watched the news lady and all that stuff. It's like, oh, they're all just speculating over. And then the guy's like, hey, can you get me a steak and then burger for my lady down here, friend? Like, how do you like it? She's like, I like it rare. It's like, yeah, it's like I was like, and you see her at the end. I'm like, now that's cool. Like, she's the big bad person now, but she's the smartest one. She proved it. So I haven't seen any of the other ones. I'm hoping she comes back
Well, and the
because
other thing too. Well, the thing is, this spawned a bunch of other movies, but I got
yeah,
to say something about her too. So, kind of bringing the culture part to it, and I'll finish up with a few thoughts here. One of the interesting things, like I say about this movie, it's really about male and female relationships presented in a modern way, and just the werewolf is the suit that those roles wear, let's say. And so at the end, it's kind of fitting because the old ways, which turns out everybody in the colony is related, and they were all being roped in by Patrick McNamee, even though he wrote the book and was talking about stuff at the very beginning. So it all makes sense. The guy feasting on the homeless was basically there to meet her to get them to go there, right?
yeah,
And it's that classic like Blade situation. Do we blend in and be quiet, or do we work out some sort of relationship, or do we overtake them? And that's briefly explored in here. But it's funny because every single person that we meet on the beach, they're werewolves, and so they all talk about how the doctor was able to make them all feel at peace with themselves. But wolves are a clan, so people mark what they want, and that's why he got marked. But they all wanted to make him an alpha because he's kind of
yeah,
like a leader among men, but he's being held back by the woman, kind of in their eyes. And so, what way to do that? We'll break them up sexually. And she's a strong, independent woman, so she doesn't need no stinking man because she's got the TV time, and
yes.
so she gets to expose what's going on allegedly. So it makes sense, and it's kind of funny that way. So it is kind of smart and kind of almost funny, not
I'm
nearly
just
as comedic as an American Werewolf in London, but I still think the irony and the fun's there without being too horrific.
I'm
What
just
were you gonna
thinking.
say?
I was just thinking, like, this whole entire movie, the whole problem could have been avoided if they was just raised a farm, had cows, cattle. So they would just sold a couple off and eat a few every once in a while.
No, it just shows that when your woman stops putting out or whatever like that, there's a lot of problems you're going to have, and
Well, I'm
that's
just
the
saying
whole
the
thing.
I'm
So
just
it was
saying
a
the
joke.
werewolves. There's a way to get around this to blend in. It's-
Well, you'll see, because again, VHS then into DVD allowed a secondary market to exist for these kinds of franchises where it's decent, might have made some money, maybe not enough to do another film, but enough where it could be warranted under the right circumstances. And you definitely see this because, again, there's several Howling movies after this which have their own entertainment value, and it's an interesting franchise. Not horrible, but this is probably the best film at all of it. But I do want to add this too here. Talking about Cassandra Marsh,
Mhm.
the sex bot here, whose role is basically, the sex kitten, the mother hen, if you will, of the pack here. So she decides who's getting it and who's not. So that's powerful. Um,
But as far as
Back in the 70s,
okay,
you had a lot of you had the industry of TV stars reaching a fever pitch with all these teen magazines and Tiger Beat and all that stuff, and Sean Cassidy, who can't act but ended up being notable in Hollywood, was on the Hardy Boys, and which is a show of mine. And you heard about a name called Christy Mcnichol, who's kind of cute in a tomboyish sort of way, and that was her shtick. And she'd been around, but she was young. She was best friends with Tatum O'Neal, who I know of from their movie. Was it Little Darlings, where they talk about how to lose their virginity, which was a big deal back then to talk about that in a movie. But also Tatum O'Neal bedded down John McEnroe, who at the time in 1984 had the best single year in tennis of any sports athlete of all time. Even up to this day, it's only been matched, not really
You lost me.
surpassed. And well, I'm coming full circle here. Okay, so of course, once he got married to her, just like the Howling, he was never the same again. That's why people say don't get married till after you're done with sports. Despite Giselle probably divorcing Brady because he wants to still play, these things are real life. And to circle back, it turns out that Cassandra Marsh wasn't necessarily as active as she could have been even now because she died of brain cancer. And it turns out for a long time with Christy Mcnichol, Christy Mcnichol came out later in her life as being gay, and she was with Cassandra Marsh for a long time until Cassandra had passed away. So it's kind of weird how small these circles are that you don't even put two and two together. And anybody, younger than 40, 45 is like, I don't care about this part of the show, and I understand it. But it proves once again that Hollywood's the greatest thing in the world if you want to mess up any sort of normal human being's lifetime, especially if you're a child. And that's never been any more different than since it started. And here you've got, she plays a sex pot. Was she in other stuff? Well, yeah, wait a minute. And then you start diving into this movie and you're like, fuck, this is kind of disgusting in a way and weird, but it's just kind of how it is with the movie.
So
But
in other words, you're saying that Hollywood is the werewolf.
it's, it's all about the spectral in Hollywood, right?
It's his fangs into you, and your life is never the same.
Well, I'll close with this. I think it's a good movie. I definitely think it's worth a watch. It to your point at the beginning of what you said, it's a bit of a slow build up for your tastes, probably a little too slow. I liked it. I don't mind it. I think it's smart about it. I don't think it overdoes it, but you're right. Even by today's standards, I think the non-CGI practical effects of the werewolf transformations and how much we get to see them, I think they're somewhat fierce looking. I don't think they look too bad. I think they look pretty good enough where you don't laugh at it. You're like, shit, that's kind of creepy.
I didn't like the pointy ears though. That was like, it's kind of weird. But I did like the gore makeup on Eddie when he was changing and stuff.
Yeah,
that was cool. His neck getting ready to change. There was a body puffing out when he first changed.
Right.
That was cool. But yeah, when they finally get to the werewolves, it's like it runs into the same problem that some of the other ones like Ginger Snaps had. Like
Ginger Snaps was good.
I don't like the pointy ears. Like the werewolf doesn't have to. It just looks too bat-like for a wolf. And I understand you're trying to go for a werewolf. So it's gotta it's gotta have the big ears stuff. But I'm like, not all wolves look like that. A lot of wolves have like cute little ears. It's like, so I'm just wondering where they got the idea where they has like the. It looks like the 1940s Batman, But other than that, though, special effects are great, though. But like I said, seeing this movie coming out, and then you said the American Werewolf in London came out the same year. Holy crap!
And Wolfen with Albert Finney, another tremendous movie, modernizing
we'll
that
we'll
stuff.
have to cover that one of these days.
Yeah, good stuff.
But yeah, for a werewolf movie, it's not bad. I mean, it takes a while to get to the action, the meat potatoes, but I mean, once you get going in there, it is great. Like I said, I like at the end. I really like. Oh, silver bullets. They don't exist. Oh, they do exist. Oh crap! Like that was just the best part for me.
When they're in the bookstore and the guy's like, "See, I got guys that want anything with books. Check this out. I even got silver bullets." And the guy's looking. I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, 30 out of 6." The guy ordered but never picked them up. And it's like, really? Okay.
At a bookstore. Like I said,
with the wooden library scroller on the sides, I'm like, when you have bookstores with books in rich mahogany and leather that are old and have beautiful inscriptions in them, now we're talking. This is good stuff.
All they needed to say is that Dick Miller be like old guy said, like, don't go up there. Bad things happen, people. Like I want like the Friday the 13th or the Halloween movies where the old guy is just like, yep, you don't want to go up there. It's like that's what I want. All right, well, but overall, I think it's a good movie.
Good.
But I said, like, I maybe we'll continue this, in the following couple days or not the month, the rest of the month. Who knows? But there's a lot of stuff to talk about Halloween. It's good to get a werewolf movie in. Obviously, the go-tos are going to be would be like American Werewolf in London, which you've already covered. But yeah, I'm glad I finally sat down and watched this. I was kind of putting it up because it is. I'm like, as I saw parts of it, over the years, I was like, I don't know if I really want to sit through this, But I sat through it, I watched it, and I enjoyed it towards the end. So
yeah, Jim in chat saying he hasn't seen it since the theater, and I gotta say I haven't seen it since late night HBO after 8 or 9 o'clock when they would show stuff with full frontal nudity. And as a kid watching, it's like, that what is going on here? Oh, they're doing it, Kids say, of course,
like
be
I
more
said,
explicit, but still.
being the NRA guy, I gotta say my only fault I can say is giving the girl the gun in the car, because there was no proper handling technique for holding the gun.
Yeah, I know it's almost Alec Baldwin territory, but not quite. Yeah, no, this movie.
When the rifle floated by itself and there's fire.
No, it's this movie. Like I said, we've covered American Werewolf in London, and that's obviously the monster hit that everybody knows about, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about Wolfen on this channel before. I believe we've got a separate review for it with Albert Finney, where it's got a murder mystery going on in downtown seedy New York, and Albert Finney is the cop who's always drinking coffee and eating donuts, walk around, and he's fantastic, and he's super low key energy sort of guy, but it's sort of trippy, and it's how do wolves live, and it's really a tale mostly about how all the riots in the 60s and 70s and the decay of the inner city and poor areas, how you can make an argument that it's about colonization, where like if Americans displaced Indians, let's say, back in the day, well, what's a modern equivalent of that? Well, it would be taking a rare race of creatures that existed, and how would they still survive in New York City? And so it's also kind of psychological, and it's hard to, I think, take something that's supposed to be like a monster, like a werewolf or a vampire, and make it really all about that, because it wouldn't be that long a period of time till serial killers became sexy and vampires became 12-year-old 150-pound boys in the 90s and hot and good looking, and the terror kind of left all of it, because you're not dealing with adults and adult themes and how they affect you in the real world. And unfortunately, despite the enjoyment out of like the Hammer horror films, which sexed up the gore and violence and gave you really lush production sets and great acting and stuff like that, the atmosphere is what it's all about. But I think this is where in the 80s we've talked about how since about Halloween in 78, when things started to branch off into two areas. One, you had where audiences wanted to be scared, and there's a market for it. So the question was, how are you going to do it? Were you going to try to make a movie like, say, The Howling, that is somewhat smart, intelligent, a little tongue-in-cheek humor in it, but atmospheric and done what I call pretty decent quality-wise? Or are you going to go the simple route and go, okay, we'll have a bunch of scantily clad young dumb people that certainly just exist for the kill count, we end up rooting for the bad guy, which doesn't mean it's not entertaining, but at some point you're going to be like, really? I mean, and as a kid watching it, you're going to watch both. And then when you get older, you're going to be like, oh my God, it's just the same shit over and over. So sometimes going back and looking at these other ones like you're talking about, it does give you, I think, a new perspective on it, right?
Yep. So final thoughts, check this movie out, and then also check out Fright Night, which we also reviewed on this channel. I think we reviewed both of them, didn't we?
Yes.
But, Fright Night
and Fright Night 2, and I believe the remake from 2010.
Yes. With Colin Farrell. Fright Night came out 4 years later after this movie, and I gotta say that's a fun movie too. So if you're looking for some Hollywood movie, or basically Halloween movies, nothing too gory, nothing too scary, American Werewolf in London, check out The Howling, which we talked about now, and check out Fright Night. Those are just fun movies to watch, But that being said, I think that's it. I think we should wrap it up here, and
we are. The one thing I'm going to mention here, though, as we close up for the night, and say thanks to everybody showing up in chat, giving some feedback on this, is for Sunday night, 7 p.m., where our decision has been made. We are doing cheerleader camp for Slasher Sundays.
So bring your pom-poms.
Bring your pom-poms. Bring your barf bags. Bring your
Jello shots.
Yeah, we're going to talk about cheerleaders getting slaughtered, another kind of slasher Halloween movie that's kind of B-rated, a cheerleader camp. So do you know off the top of your head, RDV, I'm putting you on the spot here, if cheerleader camp is available on, say, Tubi or somewhere?
That's a good check. That's a good thing. I didn't actually look it up.
While you're looking that up, I'll mention to everybody out there, I posted a free link that's not, a pay site or anything like that to Internet Archive that had the Howling on it with a decent print. Right now, at the beginning of the month, we're seeing Netflix add some things, and depending on what part of the country you're in, or if you're behind a VPN, or if you're around the world, of course, things may change, but typically a lot of these juggle the rotations, where I've seen a lot of decent stuff actually on Tubi TV. And I've also seen it, of course, on Prime, and I don't have all the paid channels either, but one of the short reviews that will be happening here soon is maybe Blood and Black Lace, let's say, or a few other types that we've talked about on our video from last week that covers a couple different things. Twins of Evil, we talked about Inferno potentially being done here, but the Blood Splattered Bride is one I've had my eye on for a while for certain reasons, and I believe you can find that on Tubi for free, but also on Shudder, but you would not find it on Amazon unless it was to rent, or say Netflix, for example. So depends on what you're looking, but give some of those a try. And Once in a Blue Moon, even Crackle might have it as well. It just depends on what's going on during the year. So what'd you find out?
I found out that Cheerleader Camp is not where we're streaming, but I did find it on YouTube. Someone uploaded the full movie. So let's look up Cheerleader Camp 1988 full movie. Boom, you'll find it. HD copy too. I was like, whoa.
And sometimes we go through these. Sometimes we go through these situations where YouTube gets a lot of these things and then they go away. Because the other thing too is there's supposed to be a remake of The Howling as far as a series on Netflix, and the person doing it has only done a few things, but most recently finished up Lock and Key, which unfortunately had a decent first season, a mess second season, and a horrible third season, which is disappointing because as a child fantasy show, it had potential, but like a lot of things, they stopped trying to write smart and they just wanted to get it done, is what it felt like. So hopefully if we see more of The Howling, it's not going to be 2020's modernized, and that's all I'll say.
All right. So we'll see you on Sunday.
Yep. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for watching and listening. As always, stay extreme.
Don't go out tonight. There's a bad moon on the rise.